The past few years have been pretty tough on farmers. Drought, all sorts of extreme weather events, financial pressures thrown in there as well. The stress can sometimes be overwhelming for primary producers who have to endure consecutive years of little income for all sorts of different reasons. Quite often, it's men who are the ones who experience the direct impacts of it, but they don't tend to reach out for help. Let's delve a little more into this. Philip Galley is the Clinical Services Lead with FocusOne Health. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Matt. How are you today?
Good. And I'm glad we're putting a light on this because really men are rubbish at going to get help on these mental health issues, aren't they?
Well, there's a perception that that's so, but I think the equal perception is men often feel the kind of help that's on offer is not relevant or may not be suitable for them. And therefore, making that link between my farm suffering, my land suffering, my bank balance is virtually not just zero, but far down below zero. How can a doctor or a medical or a health professional help me with these very, very real, live issues? I fail to see how either medication or counselling is going to give me any assistance with that. So I think that's what we need to be doing. We need to be bridging that gap between those two perceptions, both of which have some truth in them, and both of which have some errors in them.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But something else I wanted to point out too, that as much as it is, the face of whoever's running the farm, generally speaking, men in that situation, there are also flow-on effects to family and within the community as well from that too.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where, mental health and everything that sits around it is a community responsibility. That's where services like FocusOne Health, because we're embedded in local communities and more often than not, clinical services are delivered by people who have grown up in those local communities. My accent gives me away that I might not be one of those people. We get what communities are going through because we're part of the community ourselves.
Philip Galley is Clinical Services Lead with FocusOne Health. All right. So you've mentioned, some of the reasons why farmers may not necessarily want to get help. They don't see how it can help. But what are the ways that it can help, like properly, to get them through tough times?
Well, I think the first thing to recognise here is that, notwithstanding the fact that sometimes this gets argued with, men's brains are wired in a particular way. Our brains are wired towards diagnosing a problem and fixing a problem. And most of the time when men have got a problem that they can diagnose relatively straightforwardly and then work out a plan about how to address it, they can keep going well into the future and so on and so forth. It's when either of those things become problematic or out of their control, that's when the need for help tends to kick in. So I know what this problem is, but there seems to be no solution. Well, sometimes sitting in a room with somebody that's never met you before and talking about that particular issue that you're facing and the impact it's having upon you and your family and your local community, an extra pair of glasses, an extra pair of lens, if you like, shed on that problem can actually start to bring some solutions to the fore that you may not have thought of before.
Yeah. Philip Galley is the Clinical Services Lead with FocusOne Health, talking about support for farmers, particularly mental health support as well. Philip, if I can put in a personal story here as well, I've been to talk to people as well about different issues that I've faced over the times, and at first you don't think it could have any help or any effect, but once you get into that conversation you realise a couple of things, that talking about it actually really does help rather than make it worse, and just someone coming from a slightly different perspective or reframing it in some ways just makes you think a little bit differently on whatever the subject is, and you can normally work out a solution or a way forward.
Absolutely. I like to say that conversation creates momentum, and the problem with many of modern-day mental health problems that may not be all that modern-day, actually, but never mind, when people are feeling stuck, when people are feeling in a hole, when people are feeling that they're facing the same old, you absolutely need some momentum, and the conversation itself starts to build that. And with momentum comes a bit of hope, and once a fella gets a little bit of hope, the momentum starts to take care of itself. There's a beautiful short video on YouTube, 7 minutes I think it is. It's well worth watching. Tyson Fury, the world boxing heavyweight champion, fell in a total hole after October 2015 when he was stripped of his world championship belt. Initially, he faced it with bravado and typical Tyson Fury charisma, but he was drinking. He ended up using drugs. He ended up in a real hole. It is so worth watching that video in terms of what clicked for Tyson to start to build some momentum again. And there's no doubt about it, having that other lens, that alternative lens on his situation was pivotal to that.
Philip Galley is from FocusOne Health, the clinical services lead. Now, Philip, it's one thing for someone to go and seek out help, which is what we're talking about here. But what if you know someone who does need a hand? How do you encourage them to try and seek out that help?
So we're in a bit of a mental health sandwich this week because Sunday was Father's Day and tomorrow's Are You OK Day.
Yeah, it is.
And, grateful thanks for the likes of Gavin Larkin and others that launched what's become, a bit iconic, really, in Australian society. But those conversations may feel like they're quite tricky to start. But, one of the things that's really important is to be able to say to people, I'm noticing this. Am I right there or am I missing something about it? Am I reading you correctly at the moment? Mates can be a great assistance to a bloke. None of us likes to think that we're weak. None of us likes to think that we haven't got our stuff together and so on and so forth. But if we're honest, all of us know that somewhere inside there's issues that we've shelved for too long. And sometimes simply the permission of a statement like, are you okay? Is everything tracking all right? Keep it specific if you want. Are you sleeping all right? You seem like, a bit low on energy or something. Any in is better than no in whatsoever.
Yeah, it really is a change in thinking for everybody to try and get through this. And let's hope initiatives like Are You OK and the fact that there are services available is the change in there. Philip, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, Matt. Have a good day.
You too. Philip Galley is the clinical services lead from FocusOne Health. There's help out there. And trust me, 12 months ago would not have believed you to say sitting down with someone and having a chat could actually help. But it does. I've had to do it myself. And it just conversation. And, you might think it's hard to open up. Yeah, it is. But people you're talking to know how to get the best out, know how to talk to you so that you can feel comfortable to tell your story and talk through the problems. And rather than talking, you might have to say, I've talked about it in my head many times. Yeah, but that doesn't help you. It really doesn't. Starting to get the conversation out rather than in makes a world of difference. It really does.